Hi, Nadav. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wholesome Crypto podcast. I appreciate you taking that time out to speak with me today. And I'm excited to learn more
My pleasure.
about what you're doing in the education world with crypto.
Yeah, looking forward to the chat. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I know there's a lot of crypto talk we can go through, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and what you were doing before even hearing about Bitcoin and how you even got to this space. So before you even heard about Bitcoin, where were you in life and what were you doing?
So before crypto, I was I got a degree in physics out of college, and I did electrical engineering and physics.
Nice.
And I got a job at Netscape. I was actually paid by Digital Equipment Corporation, which doesn't exist anymore. Other does Netscape. But that was fun in the Valley during the, right. I was right. So in tech during the .com boom, and during that time, I started a nonprofit with some friends called Sound of Mind. We saw that media technology was starting to lower the bar so that more people could produce radio quality pieces. At the time, the internet couldn't handle audio yet, so we would make these CD magazines, and it slowly evolved into what became podcasting. Okay. I was always interested in open source and decentralization. And so we were looking at decentralizing media production, kind of letting anybody with some basic cheap equipment be a reporter and go tell stories that are kind of hyper local and important in their community. And that I became a high school teacher, a physics teacher, a robotics coach. And I kept using media in my classroom. So doing podcasting in my classroom. And then as a high school principal, we turned around a failing high school using media, having the kids make videos and podcasts. So I was always, again, looking at decentralization, looking at media. And I knew that's what I was doing before Bitcoin. It was very similar to kind of in the same space and the same technology that crypto. And I had friends in cryptography So you were always in the tech space, a tech field, that was always your thing.
I also studied electrical engineering, so that was also something I love to do. Anything new, anything related that's any new gadget that comes out, I want to learn all about it. I want to figure it out, understand it, and tinker with it. But when you first heard about Bitcoin, was it some friend that said, "Hey, Nadav, this is what you have to look at. So we have to see Bitcoin's going to become the future. No doubt, look at it, believe me," or were you kind of skeptical, this is some jargon, who cares?
Yeah, right. So I was, I was even skeptical of Linux at first, not Unix, Linux at first, kind of open source operating. Then it started taking over the world. So I knew something was happening. And I heard, Bitcoin came across my emails with my tech friends mentioning it. But at the time, right after that financial crisis, I was in the process of, we just adopted a daughter. We just bought a house. I just took over a failing school. My plate was full. So I just was I don't have time for that crap. That was my response to Bitcoin when I first saw it. And then my life stayed busy for a few years after that.
So then that's amazing that you're always it's good to hear that you're putting education in school first. It's obviously the most important thing, helping out students learn, because school wasn't easy for me either. High school, college, I was never an A+ student. I had a hard time learning. In fact, I saw kids who would pick up things much faster than me, and I'm struggling, studying twice as much, but getting half the grade.
That's me.
And it's not easy. So what?
I still can't read. I have trouble reading. That's why I went into electrical, into computer science. There's not much reading in math. And
grammar is hard for me too. I have a hard time reading a book too. I just I have to really, I feel I have to focus more. But some people look at me wow, you really understand tech way better than I do. So that kind of makes me feel better. But what made you tip over to the point where, okay, this cryptocurrency does have something. It has a future coming to it.
I had a background of relatedness I was kind of interested in decentralization as a trend and open source as a trend. It was something I was very interested in. I owned a business between the time that I was a software engineer and a teacher, and kind of trying to make my business survive. I took some executive leadership training. And in that training, we were taught about being a learner, that, how a baby learns, they get
Yeah.
addicted to it. And you literally have this dopamine opioid cycle in the brain that you get these you get high off learning new things. That's how babies keep getting driven to learn more. And that's what I learned in going into business. And then going into education, I found that the experience of being a learner, education was so structured and compliance driven that experience, the experiential being a learner, the ontological being of a learner wasn't emphasized. Actually, the opposite was emphasized. So there was also this tension for me between education and business. And I felt like there was somewhere they were colliding. And I was seeing the technology come together where media, because I used a lot of media in my classroom, in my physics classroom. And when I turned around the failing school, we did it using videos and podcasts. So I saw that media and education were merging, kind of the new literacy was media. And so I saw kind of technology and education. I saw something with like these two trains were coming at me, knowing software and knowing business and then knowing education. I saw something converging, that business people were interested in
All
learning.
the dots are connecting.
And educators were, yeah, right. So these dots were connecting, exactly. And then in 2017, I got some time. I spent a little less than a year in Japan with my wife. My wife is Japanese, and we took some time away from the department. Took me away from the school that I had transformed, that I had turned around, and so I had this downtime. And so I got back into my tech stuff, thinking I would take a break from education. And first thing I studied was Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And frankly, right after I studied, I went to my wife and I said, I'm mortgaging the house and putting everything in Bitcoin.
Oh, nice. Good call.
And so we made that. We took some time to get the mortgage, and then as quickly as we could, we aped in. And then I just kind of went down the rabbit hole and ended up writing a book. And there's an audio book and regular book, right? Education, Digital Age, How We Get There. So what happened is, going into Bitcoin, I ended up back at education, which is I did not expect the wormhole to come out of education. And the reason is that if Bitcoin is a ledger of accounts, I'm a high school principal. A high school transcript is a ledger of accounts. And I couldn't help but see that. So I started talking to my buddies that are, and I said, what does that mean? What is there a correlation? We just started kind of digging into it, and it led to now we have an app coming out, and we'll share more about that. So the convergence, it was things that momentum that had been building in my life since 1999. I'd been doing media and podcasting and video in my classroom since 2003, but really since 99, since that nonprofit. And so that convergence, Bitcoin was just the confirmation that it was the first time that things that I thought would be great if they happened, now here was something that was actually working and happening. And it blew my mind. I would have never believed that something like Bitcoin was possible, and here it was happening. But
how would you have used Bitcoin's technology to incorporate that into like a high school transcript, or what was it about Bitcoin that sparked that? Because right now, like, most people understand it as a use case for like money, and it's sound money and holding value, but I think more recently now it's becoming more or like recognized as a means of holding information along with just value. So what were you thinking in that time period? I guess before Ethereum.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here. So first, just that concept, getting that a high school transcript is a ledger of accounts. And so then you start making the parallels. Well, the issue is that our governments, because they have the printing press not tied to gold standard, they just print money because they have their pet, they can't help but print money. And then fiat money starts debasing. Well, same thing with credits. Every mayor wants the graduation rate to tick upwards. You don't want education to be going downwards during your term. So you print out credits, you give out credits. And so to the point that people can graduate high school without knowing how to read or write, because unless you go to one of the schools that has a brand name, unless you went to the right elementary school, went to the right middle school, got to the right high school that has a brand on it, your transcript is meaningless. And so you have to take these SAT tests and these AP tests. And
don't remind me of those SAT tests. I was not.
Exactly. So all that crap is compensating for the fact that our transcripts are totally void of any information, because the incentives are driving everybody toward printing fiat credits, right? And so I started thinking, what if we could decentralize the definition of a credit and really make it about project-based learning, not teaching to test, but teaching to project-based learning, which is nothing new. Project-based learning has been around for hundreds of years. This teaching to test has only been around for 150 years, and that's kind of now going to die out. We're going back to ancient oral traditions, ancient learning, the way a baby learns. We're going back to very basic ways and how the brain works. And then there's the whole piece of it turns out that it's much bigger than education, right? I thought I was going to transform education and put credits in the hands of educators and take the politicians and the adult interests and the unions out of the loop. But it turns out that because we're in an attention economy, right, and because jobs are ending, and now there's this new work loop where our attention is the resource that everybody's fighting over, it turns out that education is at the foundation of our economy in a digital world. And so the communities that can learn how to be producers rather than consumers, they can learn to manage their attention with mindfulness, with work ethic, and learn to produce something content-wise that other people want to watch, are the ones that are going to eat everybody else's lunch. And so academic capital, in a sense, becomes the leading indicator of economic success. And so here we are again. I went into education and came back around out in economics. And so we started realizing this is much bigger, the implications of a blockchain-based, a Bitcoin-like high school transcript ends up creating a set of data that is much higher quality than standardized test data. Standardized test data measures how good you are at drop-down lists and short answer questions, which is what AI already does well. So essentially, we're measuring how well our kids are going to be, how well they're going to do at jobs that no longer exist, right? So it's a totally terrible. Even rich kids at the best schools are finding that when they hit the work world, they're not ready. And so I, as a principal, was saying, what world are my kids going to graduate into, and how to prepare them for that? And it turns out it's that opioid dopamine cycle. How do we get them hooked on learning to be lifelong learners and then to be producers of content? And so and it turns out the highest leverage play is to focus just on 11th and 12th grade in that high school transcript, because what happens if you transform that high school transcript and the incentives, I'm big about incentives. If you change the incentives that everybody's building toward, then K through 10 all build toward trying to get kids to get these gold standard high school credits that are project-based that actually predict how well you're going to do in the digital economy. So we realized that we're going to transform the whole system by creating a blockchain-based transcript.
So how would you, like what kind of project would it be? So right now, as we understand, there's math, social studies, history, science, physical education. How would that, I mean, again, for me, that's how I learn. That's how I don't have a hard time understanding how could you teach thousands and millions of students all over at least the United States in a scalable way, but with projects. What would my day look like as a student in high school?
Yeah. So the first 2 years of high school, there might be it might be somewhat similar where you might need to learn them skills for digital literacy, which is audio and video, basically. I mean, there's some visual, but basically digital literacy is not pen and paper anymore. It's, audio and video production. So you might need to learn those skills. You might need to get credibility within the community to be able to go out in the field. But basically by 11th grade, the goal is that your parents sign a permission slip that says, hey, my child, I trust them to be out of the building whenever they want, open permission slip all year round, whenever they want to go. So then the 11th and 12th grade, what you're doing each month, instead of taking 6 classes at a time, if you only take 1 class per month, you actually earn more credits than the way they do right now with 6 credits at a time, because there are actually 10 months in the academic year. So you actually get 10 credits if you do 1 credit at a time. So you go deep, and each credit starts off, it's inverted. You know how our classes right now, you have a bunch of class, do a bunch of worksheets, whatever, and then you cram for a test at the end. This is inverted. You cram for a test at the beginning to get into the credit, to show that you have some content knowledge. And that's where the credit begins. Now you start taking that content and asking questions. So what would it look like? You could be for humanities courses or politics courses, instead of learning about it, you could go to a political rally. You do some research about the background, you prepare some questions, you go with your phone as a microphone, you interview people, you come back, you edit it together. And each credit is 1 10-minute piece of audio or video. That's what a credit is. You upload it to the platform, and there's 3 credit experts on the platform that decide if your credit earned a credit, if your piece of media earned a credit. And so it's not your teacher. You can't bat your eyes at them. You can't mess with them. You have to do 3 versions. So it's all about academic skills. It's like going to the gym. You have to practice. You have to show that you did it a few times. So if you're practicing active listening or whatever the skill, whatever the academic skill is, you're showing that you're practicing over the course of the month and getting better at it as your interviews, as your podcasts go. And at the end, you're going to compile kind of the best of 10 minutes. And that editing process, what I found with my kids, is a very powerful metacognitive piece. So what it looks like is you, at the beginning, learn a lot. You learn stuff pretty quickly, and then you scan and ask questions. Then you choose somewhere to dive deep. And then you do a deep hyper-local reporting on that subject in humanities. It might be interviewing people in your community, it might be going to a rally, whatever it is. I might be reporting on the foster care system from inside, but it involves research, writing, but really we're looking at skills, not content. So the kids study the content that interests them, and we give them maybe a bag of content to kind of give guidelines. Now in science and math, it's a little different. If you know Khan Academy, you know what that is?
Khan Academy.
So imagine if Khan Academy was by students for students instead of some dude making it for everybody. Imagine if students were making pieces for each other. So for mathematical topics and some science you can do, like NPR has some science podcasts. So you could do some podcasting about science, but some of the science is a little more math heavy. Yeah. And so then you would just be explaining it to the next generation, and the kids would follow the older kids that they really like. And so the younger kids see these older kids out of the building, reporting on things, coming back to edit. And you need much fewer resources for kids when they gain that level of independence. When they become producers, the resources you need as a high school principal are much less. So you can actually double the amount of teachers you have in 9th and 10th grade and really make sure they get those skills and give them the attention and help them, and so that they can get by 11th grade out into the world doing these recordings and editing and learning all those skills. And then 11th to 12th grade, they're really focused on getting these 10 credits per year. And that's all they have is 10 credits for 2 years. Our transcript only holds 20 credits. You can't have more. You can't, that's it. And so it's your 20 best credits they end up putting on there. And that's what colleges and universities, there's kind of a proof of work. Not only do they see your transcript, but there's a QR code next to each credit, and they can scan and see the work that led to that credit, right? And so if any credit starts allowing crap work to earn a credit, that credit will lose value, and the principals will stop allowing it for credit, or the school districts, or Harvard won't accept it, and so it's, and then imagine if you are a podcaster and you say, hey, I really think young people should study this or have an experience doing this, and you design a credit because you want young people to learn something about the digital economy, about how their attention is being captured, about whatever it is, and you design a credit. And then if it goes viral, you have thousands of kids at all these high schools going on and reporting on the credit you created. And the cool part is, as a podcaster, you get exclusive rights to all that media that comes back at you from these kids. So if you're a public radio station, you put out a challenge, thousands of kids all over the country then respond to it and upload pieces. 3 teachers then screen it, and you can then just screen by which ones earned a credit. So you don't have to see the crappy ones. You only get the gold standard work. And so you have this stream of high quality youth content from, so like I said, foster care. If somebody wants to study the foster care system, hey kids, if you're in foster care, here's a credit for you, right? And then we get kids reporting about the system from inside and learning about the system that they're in. So they learn about foster care, which they might not have. So there's all these opportunities to engage young people as reporters. And in right now, the local media market is barren, right? So hyper-local journalism will actually be coming from our high schools with these credits.
Interesting. So, I mean, that's great that that it's a decentralized method where students can feel free to do what they believe and do what they love, follow the topics they love to listen to and follow. Because yes, I mean, not everyone's interested in the same thing. Some kids are more based on art and creative side of drawing and writing, and some other kids are more interested in like science-based things and math, and there's some other kids are just love to mix both. It's good that you get to expose them to what they really love to do, and by doing that, they get to also tap into things that they probably wouldn't have done on their own, like writing, because even though you are studying math, you still have to explain it and talk about it. So you still are forced to learn about how to speak properly, how to use the right words, the right grammar, and publish a report with literature versus just talking about it. So that's good that kind of unknowingly force them to see the other side of the spectrum too, or use the other side of their brain. But I guess for them, this is again in high school, but then how is it going to work for them after high school if they graduate and want to move to a college? I know you were briefly speaking about the college will look at their curriculum, look at their transcript, scan their QR code, and see what they've done and published. How would that? Currently college isn't looking at school that way. They still have their standard curriculum. You have to follow these courses in order to become an engineer. You have to follow these courses to become a business major or something with English or reading or history, whatever it is. How do you get the college to say, this person can now follow the curriculum that we still have that's standard? And it's probably a little bit harder to change an old college like Harvard versus those new online colleges that are all digital.
Yeah, I'm not. So I don't know about transferring college itself, but there's what this changes is how universities interface with high
Hmm.
schools, right? So they're going to have this database available to them. So instead of asking students to pay a fee and do an essay and student
Hmm.
application, they can actually proactively mine the data and say, hey, we're looking for a student who might be in a community where other students aren't high achieving, but they are whatever. They can set some criteria and screen and find kids and then proactively offer them admissions for kids that are doing outstanding work in whatever type of student, whatever profile student they're
Hmm.
looking for. They can actually go out and actively recruit students because on this platform you can actually see which students are doing what work. And there's still every student is still going to have to do a math credit and do a social studies credit. There's going to be still the same coverage of content of it's skills really of mathematical skills and scientific thinking skills and reasoning. You still, because we have kids captive in K through 12, we're still going to make sure they learn all those different types of thinking and they'll find which ones resonate with them. And they always have electives and things like that. And when you work on projects with other students, you might be the front person on camera and somebody else might be doing the research and somebody else might be doing the tech and engineering, right? You'll find your specialty, but you have to be involved in projects in the different subject areas. When they get, so universities right now have this issue that they're starting to realize that these standardized tests are crap and they don't measure
Yeah.
anything. And so they're starting to be test free. So now you don't need to have a college essay. They don't need to have all these admissions officers reading these essays. We have the credit experts who read and screen and find only the top quality work. And so we're providing with gold standard high school credits, we're providing universities an opportunity to change where they spend money in admissions and really invest in the young people who have shown that they're going to do well in the digital economy. Now, what they do with that when they get to college, I think the kids are going to transform the universities from within because they will now know how to podcast and know how to make videos, and they won't just make research papers. They'll say, "Hey, teacher, do you mind if I make a video about this?" And the
Hmm.
teachers, some of them will say yes, some of them will say no. You still have to do research, but if they show them how much scripting they do and how much research and their references, and right, if they've learned the academic skills, the universities will leverage those skills and the students will use them. But they do have to be gold standard. The bar has to be high so that when you get to universities and when the universities look at these credits, they see that these kids are academic. These
Yeah.
are academic credits. It's not likes, it's not popularity. These kids have done academic work as opposed to right now, which is teaching the test, right? Will this be on the test is what every student is asking, but it's also what every teacher is asking because that's how they're evaluated,
Gotcha.
right? And they only want to teach what's going to be on the test. And when we get rid of that and let teachers teach what matters to human beings in this day and age, you're going to get kids that are much wiser and much more ready for university and thinking in much deeper ways. I think actually there's a lot of Harvard Business School did a study. There's a lot of universities and business schools that are saying our kids don't have the critical thinking skills. And kids coming with these credits, we believe will have those critical thinking skills. So universities will start saying, hey, if you earn these gold standard credits, especially this particular credit and this credit and that credit, we think you have the critical thinking for Harvard. So I think schools like Harvard will actually really appreciate having students do these very difficult, high quality gold standard credits instead of taking something like an AP
Hmm.
exam.
Okay, that makes sense. And then at what point, I guess the app that you're building is making this easy and intuitive for students and schools to view and look at. So how are you incorporating, I guess, what type of blockchain technology are you incorporating in this application?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are the way the organization is built, we don't want to take venture capital because then we have a high time preference because the money's
Yeah.
burning. We want to really focus on gold standard high school credits. I've been doing this for 20 years in schools, and until NFTs came out, nobody knew what I was talking about and the
Yeah.
pandemic. Now suddenly I say NFT and everybody totally
Yeah.
understands that media and capital are merging. And when I explain what academic capital is as an NFT, as a non-transferable NFT, because students can't give it to their buddy to help them graduate, it's kind of a dumbed down NFT. But the concept of an NFT is really what the high school transcript will become a wallet of NFTs. And we will crowdsource the creation of credits to podcasters, to university. Anybody who wants to design a credit will be able to design their own credit, and we'll get some really innovative credits that go viral on the platform. But we're counting on the crowdsourcing, the community to find the genius in these new types of credits. And then school districts will have to choose which ones they align with. And maybe Harvard would say, hey, I give my stamp of approval to this. So that New York City then says, hey, I'll take all the
Yeah.
Harvard credits for sure. Right. So there's going to be some there's going to be some capital that you need to show that your credits have have academic value to earn that academic capital. in terms of blockchain, blockchain engineers right now are so hard to get and they're so expensive that we don't have any on the team. But the way the team, we all have day jobs. I won't have a day job soon, but I'm still active high school principal for now. I resigned, so my last day is in January. But the rest of the team have day jobs, and then we work with university students that have internship hours as part of their university. Awesome. So they have a certain number of internship hours they have to do. So we mentor the college interns to do the work to build the platform, and then they pitch to high school students to then do the media work with teachers. So we are looking for some blockchain people that can mentor, and all they have to do is they would have to mentor college students that are interested in blockchain to figure out what partners to work with in the blockchain space. Right now, the way we're doing the blockchain is we're simulating. It's all in centralized databases, and until we get through proof of concept. The app itself won't be live to the public until late 2022. Okay. We'll have a beta out in the first months of next year, but we'll be only testing with a few schools here in the Bronx. And so it's a little development. So we probably have over a year before we need an actual blockchain to plug into. But we know how it works, and we have the specs, kind of the white paper or the light paper we have finished. So it's just a matter of then seeing. And I think with Taproot coming out, I have a lot of hope. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist mostly. I have some other crypto, but I would love to have. So it's going to be an NFT platform, and the question is, which NFT? How do we build these NFTs? I'm also very interested in Luna and Terra's Luna platform. I think they're starting to work with NFTs. So I think over the next 6 to 8 months, the NFT space is going to start, settling down. The dust is going to start clearing, and I think education, these high school transcript and these youth productions are going to be kind of the killer app on NFTs that nobody saw coming. Yes,
that's interesting because of course, I mean, if you tell a student now in high school, I think they're pretty caught up with current technology and what's going on. You're probably all pretty familiar with NFTs and Bitcoin and whatever other projects there are out there. So they'll probably be on board like, oh, I can create my own NFT, which is my own work. My own work is
right. And there's an incentive for them on this platform that if they, so you can mint one of these NFTs and that's a credit. And that's fine. Anybody can do that. But if a bunch of students can put a block of these credits together that's as diverse as their city, so it's not all rich white kids, that it's as diverse socioeconomically, and they can put together a bunch of these already approved NFTs into a block, they get 25 years of kind of a basic income in our token disperse them. That's kind of our, that's how we're going to get these tokens out, is into the wallet of young people who have shown that they're ready for the digital economy. We're investing in them. So there's also incentive for kids like, hey, if I can do this, and if I can coordinate with other schools in other neighborhoods, and I can meet kids that are not like me in a poor neighborhood, a rich neighborhood, we can all get together and make a block, and then we all get 25 years of money from it. So there's an incentive to deal with diversity in our schools. I
think it's also very important for kids to understand, like, diversity will help you advance together. Like you're getting such different types of people talking about different types of subjects, things you never think about because you haven't experienced that type of lifestyle yet. That's amazing.
That's true learning from people who don't think like you. Right now, our schools isolate kids to be with kids that grew up just like them, and they don't learn how to think. And then they get out of school and somebody challenges them. And
it's a whole new world.
That's why we have all these arguments and we can't talk to each other, because nobody has learned how to do the critical thinking and discussion to deal with people that think differently than them. So we have Trump people and liberals that don't know how to talk to each other, but they're saying both valid things, but they can't even hear each other because they haven't been trained to do that work.
Yeah, exactly. And they sometimes just open your ear a little bit and just listen. You don't have to agree either. It can be completely wrong, but at least you listen to why they're wrong.
And being a reporter is that these kids will be out with microphones listening, and then they're going to have to do the voiceover, and they're going to have to edit it down. So they're still going to have their imprint on it, but they're going to have listened at least to another side.
So now, obviously, maybe a few years ago, this would have been harder to pitch because, again, everything was in class, in person. COVID-19 came along. A lot of students went remote. I've heard a lot of cousins who are in high school or middle school. They're just like on their laptops and Zooming or using whatever video conferencing platform to just take a class. And to me, that's like, I don't know how much I can listen to a teacher on a video call. It's boring in class. I'm sure it's boring on a laptop. And kids are smart. They know how to get around technology behind a teacher's back. I mean, I used to be able to do like, in my high school class, I was in a computer class, and I would do like use a command prompt to send messages to my friends in different computer rooms.
Exactly.
It was like fun. You can do a lot of different things.
You learned more by subverting the teacher than you did by listening to the teacher.
And now if you give the power back to the kids, like, hey, here's tech, go nuts, have fun, let us know what you've created. There's no holding back. So how has, I guess, this past year really helped push along remote learning and remote understanding?
Yeah, I think that parents got to see what their children's education looks like and how they're being the consumer education, how they're being fed, and especially when it's coming over Zoom. Our current model of education is that you pour stuff into kids and then measure what comes out. And that's the opposite of education. Education, even the word means to elucidate, to bring out from the child their thinking and their curiosity, their passion. It's against how our brain learns, and it's against how babies learn, right? And it's totally this industrial model of trying to make us into robots is totally contrary. So I think it was exposed and everybody saw, oh, wow, this industrial model is actually painful and it doesn't work. And so then some people discover for themselves, wait, I need my young person to be creating something, not just consuming this stuff. And so a lot of people, like I said, I've been doing this for, since 1999 for 20 years. And all of a sudden, everybody understands what I'm talking about. I talked to anybody that was home during the pandemic with their kids, and I don't have to say very much. They get it right away. Where in the past, they might have assumed that things were happening in school, or right. They just didn't know how much this centralized top-down structure is trying to make robots, not humans. And so we have a real opportunity now to engage the parents where they wouldn't have been. I think the kids will get this, but the parents would have been harder before the pandemic. Now the parents get it too.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that's, I think, forced upon everyone to learn and understand how powerful technology is. And not just that, but how much you can do on your own at home. There's no need to feel like you have to be somewhere in person to get something done. It's really up to the person themselves to accomplish a task.
Right. What are you curious about? And we need to there needs to be some guide rails. So it might be that the teacher gives them kind of a library of resources, like choose among these, but then they choose what rabbit holes they want to follow. Like and the questions they're answering for homework are their questions, not the teacher's questions, right? It's a totally different approach. And it's inversion, just the same way that inversion is happening to corporations, where the teacher now becomes somebody who's good at listening rather than speaking, right? It's that inversion of the kind, and students start having a real audience. I know in my school, what teachers would say to me, I've never seen this side of these kids. I've never seen these kids be so academic, until they would make these videos that the whole school would watch together. And because they had all their classmates, kids just want to look good like the rest of us, right? Especially in front of their classmates. So they would really put their best foot forward. And we started getting this nerd culture of students wanting to make the best, the video that really taught you something and that made them look good academically. And because we made it academic, they didn't have a choice, And so we have kids captive for these years, K through 12. And until now, the corporations have been educating our kids with advertising better than our schools have been educating our kids. But everybody's trying to get a self-driving car so you can lock people in a box and feed them content and control their thinking and start to influence them to buy stuff or feed them things that they might be interested in But we have in this democracy, we have this opportunity with kids, not 40 minutes in the commute. We have them for, whatever that is, how many, K through 12, 13, 14 years, we have them captive where we can teach them to use their attention. So it's this huge opportunity to take charge and be whoever, if this happens in America or somewhere else, whoever does this will totally dominate the digital world if we start using that time to teach kids about their attention, teach kids about mindfulness, teach kids about how to use their attention as their value proposition and not give it to these screens whenever they bing or ding or, And so it's a massive, massive, massive opportunity to have kids, we can force them to learn academic skills, which then in the rest of their life they will have and they will use when it's appropriate.
It's like also preparing them for the creative gig economy. Like that's where the whole everything is heading towards now anyways. Like there's a lot of course, jobs that would always be needed where it's more routine and standard. But as you can see, people are publishing more and more content out every day. It's becoming crazy. I mean, I even started this podcast, like publishing creative, useful content is the future. That's what will drive a country to succeed, is like how can you help each other? How can you help with creative standards? So yeah, I'm excited for that. I think it's definitely needed.
Yeah, you're an educator. And what you said from 2005 to 2015, 94% of jobs were contract or temporary, right? And at this point, 40% of Americans are in contingent jobs, so temps or on-call workers. So the job where you punch in, punch out, and get a salary and benefits, that's gone. Now we're each a brand,
Exactly.
right? And there's no way around that. And so if we're going to educate our kids to be successful and not be the consumers that are dominated by the apps created by whoever is controlling us, if we're going to be the ones taking control, we have to be producing, and we have to have work ethic, frankly, right? And that comes from being a worker, not having a job.
Exactly. Do you think you would be able to accomplish this if it wasn't due to cryptocurrency and NFTs and Bitcoin coming into your life? Do you think this is something you'd probably still be doing now, no matter what, and you just probably do it in a more traditional manner of databases and decentralized like IPFSs?
Yeah, no. So I would be doing it at one school the way I have been for 20 years. It's been working at one school. We blow everybody away. You walk into the school, it's magic. Kids walk up to you. Right when we had high-level people visit the school, kids would walk up with a microphone, interview that. Like, people visiting the school were like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. And they would come to our showcase events and see the films like, wow, these are really good academic pieces. So I would be doing it in one community here in Harlem, and I would be loving it, and I would not be looking any further. I never thought it would be going further. The creation of the blockchain first that kind of opened my mind, and then NFTs in particular, is what allowed other people to believe this was possible, and had a team come to me and say, hey, let's scale what you're doing and the difference you're making. And had the rest of the world not come and seen and that convergence of what I was already doing with NFTs, on that side, I would have never found a community to build this with me the way they are. And the other side, I became independently wealthy through hodling Bitcoin. And so I'm now quitting my job as a principal to work on this full time. And had it not been for Bitcoin, I would not be doing that, right? So the two sides, one is my funding, and two is the acceptance and the willingness. When I say those three letters, NFT, that people are like, oh, that makes sense. Whereas for 20 years, I talk about media and capital, and people are like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, shut up. Let me come visit your school. That sounds cool, but don't talk to me about anything else. So nobody was open to high school transcript that could challenge the old transcript until now.
That's the thing. When people hear NFTs, they usually think about, a valuable JPEG or some type of financial incentive. Everything is highly involved with money. How much fiat is this worth? But people forget NFTs can be used for so much more. This is not strictly just something you can buy an expensive piece of art. This is how you can own a personal asset that is yours and keep it forever, and then show it amongst anyone else, and they all know it's confirmed and owned by you. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. But I mean, I'm glad you're using that route for NFTs for ownership.
Yeah, I hate where NFTs are right now. But it's early, right? Whenever anything's early, it's a lot of scammers, it's a lot of people wanting money, it's a lot of people just it's a lot of craziness. But I see under the surface projects like mine building, and I'm like, a few years from now, people don't know what's coming, right? So I'm excited about a space that I'm not very proud of right now.
So I guess asking that question. So what is your crypto pet peeve, being in it for so long and seeing it grow?
Yeah. Okay. So I've got one pet peeve that's above all. I've got a few. People that don't hold any Bitcoin.
Really?
If you're in crypto and you hold no Bitcoin, I want to slap you. And then people that don't hold any Bitcoin, don't hold anything, like my father, right? It's like, I care about you. Hold a little bit, hold 1%. I don't care. Hold a little bit of Bitcoin. So anybody that doesn't hold any Bitcoin, the fact that I can't communicate to them well enough, I can't listen to them and hear their world. I can't get into their world enough to be able to explain to them why this is so important. That's a pet peeve, because I blame myself. Anybody in my life that doesn't hold a little Bitcoin. So that's my first pet peeve, is people that just that hold zero.
And it's not. That's the thing. People will see that Bitcoin's worth 50,000, something like that right now. You don't have to buy a whole one at all. You can pay $1 and get.
We should talk about sats, not.
But it is like it is a scary factor. Like I mean, everyone thinks they're so late into the game with Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever other coins there are. Everyone thinks Doge is the next one to become a multimillionaire, but it always goes back down to education, with not just understanding money, and also understanding what type of technology you're investing into and how that technology can help. So yeah, I'm glad that you are an advocate for pushing Bitcoin. I'm glad that you're pushing people to understand the blockchain, what they're trying to invest in. So it is important, definitely needed. And I know, I mean, I do know some people who dumped all their Bitcoin for Ethereum. So that's also, I'm sure you guys have had butts heads before, but either way, I mean, I love both.
It's causing innovation, and I'm a fan of innovation. We need it, and I love the work that Ethereans are doing. I think that's the .com bubble kind of stuff. We need to get that innovation out. So it needs to happen. I'm not against it, but if you're building it, again, if you're a producer, great. But if you're a consumer and you don't study enough, and you put your money in, I'm just scared that all the exchanges are, and all these people using leverage and all this stuff, that ultimately it's just going to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. And that's what makes me worry, because then we're going to end up with blood in the streets, right?
Yeah. And then, as with anything, only invest what you're willing to lose. But I guess personally for me, I believe cryptocurrency will be the future. So that's.
I've made 2 big investments outside of Bitcoin: Binance in 2018, and then Luna now. And my theory, this is not financial advice, obviously, and the only reason I buy something other than Bitcoin is for the same reasons I buy Bitcoin. If I see a lot of people using it and I want to use it, if those two things converge, like, Luna, there's a ton of people in Korea. He's got a huge base of already not users someday, not potential, in current users. And then I wanted to use the Anchor protocol, 20% interest, right? I'm about to retire and I need to find a source of income. I can park some UST in there and get 20% interest. Like, Jesus, I want to use that. And that's when I said, wait, I'm thinking about using it. And he has all these people. Maybe there's a shot at this one. The same thing with Binance. I was like, this, the exchange, I don't pay fees if I do in BNB, right? You're late. I own BNB suddenly. I was like, how did that happen? I'm a Bitcoin maxi. What am I doing with BNB? And that suddenly triggered something. Wait, there must be other people like me, and we'll each just hold a little bit so we don't pay fees. Smart. But there it is, right?
That's the investment side.
Once in a while, other things.
That's an investment side in your head. That's good.
Right. And it's fun to play and it's fun to gamble and all that stuff. But the safe, the other pet peeve I have is when people buy Bitcoin and then they start worrying about price changes. Or I always tell them, if you're going to buy, it's a 5-year thing. Like don't touch it for 5 years. I don't care what happens for 5 years. You don't touch it. And people that buy it and then it dips, you're not going to find the exact bottom. You think you're some genius, right? Of course you're going to lose money. But that's all those things of how hard the onboarding is. My pet peeve is just I want the transfer of we're going, whether we like it or not. I'm not saying the digital future is going to be better than the industrial past. I don't know. It's going to be up to us, but I know it's happening, right? This transition from jobs to work, the temporary, the end, or all that stuff is happening, whether we want it or not. Inversion is happening, and there's going to be this opportunity for a transfer of wealth. And I'm hoping that the transfer of wealth doesn't go from one small group of rich people to a new small group of rich people. I hope enough of us buy in so that we each get a little piece.
Yeah, that's a tough part because, of course, people who do have money can invest more earlier on, take a bigger risk, and also just as it grows, they become even much more wealthy. So it is tough.
Yeah. Or if you own an exchange, you make money when it's going up and when it's going down. Both times.
That's why I didn't trust BNB. I didn't trust Binance. Like, I didn't want to be involved with that one. I was like, this is too like. I think they did a lot of copycat with Ethereum. Yes. First off, and just like, I mean, again, as an investment tool, sure, invest in it, make your money, leave, great. But for a long term, I'm like, I don't know, like it's kind of risky for me. But I'm a very conservative investor, so I'm like Bitcoin, Ethereum. I'm gonna buy whatever I can afford and hope the best in the future.
What is, they say that dead people have the best earnings because they're leaving it there. So right, I think that's the best way. That conservative approach where you study something, you get in, and then you set it and forget it is really how you make money long term. How you're going to have generational wealth, whereas other people are going to have a lot of stress and a lot of ups and downs and end up with nothing.
So let's see. So back to understanding more about what you're doing with your app and developing it with blockchain technology. Right now, how are you going about it? Because I know, I mean, people think like, oh, right when you start a company, it goes right into blockchain, right into digital world. You put everything on the block. It's like, you can't do that. It's too expensive. It's too hard. You can't get everyone on that same boat. There has to be some type of centralized beginning to then decentralize it. So do you have any type of little roadmap that you can share?
Yeah. So So right now we're onboarding cohorts of college interns that are going to start explaining the platform to high school students. They're going to make videos, short videos, podcasts explaining the platform. So they're going to study. They're going to study from my book essentially, which is where all the ideas are captured. And so that's this current phase. Then we have in the summer of 2022, we have the Genesis block happening. So that's going to be the first cohort of high school students that are going to create the first set of media on the platform. And we'll have the first set of credits published on the platform by March of 2022. And then in the summer of 2022, the first group of students and teachers on the platform with the Genesis block. And then what happens after that is we start, because we pay teachers $180 an hour to be one of these credit experts to evaluate incoming work. So they can stay teachers in the classroom, but on the app at night and on weekends, they can earn some extra money so that they don't have to become administrators or leave. If they love teaching, they can stay in teaching. Or if you're a podcaster and you help mentor a few kids to earn these credits, you can then make $180 an hour as a side hustle while you're getting your podcast off the ground. So we're setting up incentives. And so what has to happen is if I open the floodgates and say, hey guys, make $180 an hour if you can qualify for this, people will come on and then there's only going to be one piece for them to grade every 6 months. They're going to say this is crap. So we have to have an invite only where we can inject people onto the platform. So at the end in September 2022, we're hoping to start a PR campaign so that our waiting lists get deep, and then we can start injecting people on to match each other. And as long as we have the students to match the credit experts and the credits on the platform to interest the teachers and the students, we'll slowly start onboarding more credit studios who write the credits, more credit experts who evaluate the credits, and more students who generate the content. And so it's going to be I think at first it's a very slow, only working with a few consortiums. We're starting with schools that haven't used standardized testing in decades, that opted out of standardized testing way before everybody else. They're the leaders, and we're acknowledging and respecting and getting them the resources first. And so once by the end of 2022, we should be getting to the point that we're adding entire schools and eventually entire districts on, and we can onboard faster. So that's kind of the roadmap, how we intend by 2023 to have an app that is pretty much feels open once there's enough liquidity in terms of graders and students and credits that people can jump on it and access it without limitations.
Awesome. I'm excited for that. Hopefully everything goes smoothly and you get a lot of people on board, because that does sound a pretty good incentive, $180 an hour just to help out.
Right. And I think that's the smallest incentive. The incentive for the college students to give their internship credits, they get a pre-mine of the coin that hasn't launched yet. Right. So they get a pre-mine based on their contribution during their internship. So the way that works is they propose a project when they become interns, they learn about the platform, they do some work with me. Once they understand it, they say, okay, I'm going to make a podcast or a video explaining this to teachers, and they propose it. The community accepts their project and tells them how much of the pre-mine they get for that work. And then once they finish that work and submit it, once it's approved, they get that pre-mine. And so the college interns get a huge, I think that pre-mine, then once the coin is launched, is the coin that the academic capital coin that the young people will kind of make these blocks and mint together, that they'll get as a basic income. So it will become a coin for high school students, but in building, it's a coin for college students. And so those college students, I think if we reach scale, we'll make a lot of money.
So that's good. Yeah, that's a good incentive. And so you're also launching your own coin. That's also
one coin that will be controlled by the students. That will be that for groups of students that make media that's diverse, that work with each other across zip codes. That's the only coin that we're making. And there's a pre-mine for the college students. And then people that are participating with us earn royalties. So there's a $9 fee to initiate a credit on the platform. And that $9 fee pays all of us that help make the platform possible. So if 1% of 11th and 12th graders in the United States participate, that's about 80,000 users is 1%. And so, 800,000 users, 1%. And so we would each be making about $150,000 a year in royalties. So it's not bad for us as well.
Oh, man, I'm excited for you guys to keep going. Yeah. I'm going to definitely watch what you're doing. And I'm happy that
when the app comes out, there's going to be two versions. Right? There's a free version that anybody can browse the media and watch all of it. And there's a paid version that you can access the metadata. Where is the student? Who's the teacher? What's the school? What you're at? The metadata then is only bought for universities and school districts. And so they'll pay us an annual fee to access that metadata. And that annual fee is what pays the graders to grade the work.
Nice. So that's, and then they'll be able to use that to determine what students would best fit in their course. Or
right, so they can mine that data, right? They can basically write bots to dive into that data and find students that meet their criteria to offer them opportunities.
Exciting stuff, Nadav.
It's fun. We're the tortoise that's going to beat the hare, right? We're not pre-funded. We're not moving quickly. We're moving deliberately and slowly with volunteers and college students.
That's how a real startup is.
Yeah, so it's real slow and deliberate, but the team we have is so amazing that I have no doubt what we built is going to be remarkable. And even if we fail, we're all going to have an incredible experience in the process, and we're going to learn so much.
One of the last questions I want to ask, I usually ask everyone, what is your favorite wholesome crypto moment?
Anytime one of my students, actually it just happened yesterday, I ran into the custodian from my old school. I live right next to my old school. I thought I was going to spend a whole career at that building, so we moved in next door. So I was walking to ship something at UPS, and I saw him at a little cafe outside. And it turns out that his son is now into crypto, and his son was a baby. I saw him growing up. So whenever one of the kids of my employees or one of my former students is actually leading the high school our development team, he's now in his 30s. He was one of my robotics students. He was in high school. I was his teacher, his physics teacher, in 2006, 2007, around there. So anytime those are the wholesome moments for me, when it's not just the big, powerful guys. Those are the moments that excite me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you're working on. Thank you for sharing that moment. And I'm excited to see how you go on from here on out.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love your show.
See you, everybody.